This Monday, Mexico offered political asylum to WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange after a British judge blocked his extradition to the United States to face espionage charges. In Chile, high school students who were protesting against the new university entrance exam were repressed by police. Members of the Organisation of the Petroleum Exporting Countries failed to reach an agreement this Monday on whether or not to increase output in February. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. This Monday, Mexico offered political asylum to WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange after a British judge blocked his extradition to the United States to face espionage charges. Mexican authorities have previously offered political asylum to high-profile international figures such as former Bolivian President Evo Morales. Assange is wanted on 18 charges in the United States relating to the 2010 release by WikiLeaks of 500,000 secret files detailing aspects of military campaigns in Afghanistan and Iraq.
I firstly celebrate that the UK provided protection to Mr. Assange, that the extradition to the United States was not authorized. I believe that it is a triumph of justice. I celebrate that the UK acted in that manner because Assange is a journalist and deserves an opportunity. I am in favor of pardoning him. Not only that, I will ask the Secretary of Foreign Relations to do the necessary proceedings to ask the UK government the possibility that Assange is freed and that Mexico offers him political asylum.
This Monday, British District Judge Vanessa Barrezza ruled that Julian Assange cannot be extradited to the United States to face charges of espionage and of hacking government computers. US lawyers are set to appeal the ruling, which comes after weeks of hearings at the Old Bailey, the Central Criminal Court of England and Wales, last year, and campaigning by Assange's supporters and others who stress that the US charges against him are an attack on press freedom. The case against the 49-year-old relates to WikiLeaks' publication of hundreds of thousands of leaked documents regarding the Afghanistan and Iraq wars, as well as diplomatic cables. Assange's lawyers argue the prosecution is politically motivated and that he's being pursued because WikiLeaks published US government documents that revealed evidence of war crimes and human rights abuses. The judge ruled that while US prosecutors had met the test for Assange to be extradited for trial, the ruling was based on his mental health and the risk he could take his own life. WikiLeaks editor-in-chief Kristin Hrafnsson stressed on Monday that the United States should abandon its attempt to extradite WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange.
A horrible year in 2020. It has been annus horribilis for most of us. But let's remember it was year 10 of that situation for Julian Assange. But what a moment, a glimpse of hope to start the new year and hopefully a new era. It is a day with win for Julian Assange, but we have to be cautious. It is not necessarily a win for journalism. I am concerned that instantly upon giving her decision, the lawyers for the US government indicated they would appeal the decision. They should not. And there should be a call out and pressure on the US side to drop the appeal, to say enough is enough. We've had enough of this. We have plenty to deal with in this new year, but not this.
The US Department of Justice said Monday the United States will continue to seek the extradition of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. A department spokesman said in a statement that while they're extremely disappointed with the UK court's ruling, they are satisfied that the United States prevailed on every point of law raised during the case. In particular, the court rejected all of Assange's arguments regarding political motivation, political offence, a fair trial and freedom of speech. Julian Assange's supporters cheered and hugged in front of the Old Bailey in London after the ruling that the WikiLeaks founder could not be extradited to the United States. The final decision on an appeal of the ruling would fall to the British Home Secretary, while the stance of US President-elect Joe Biden could be crucial to the case. Delivering her ruling, Judge Vanessa Barretza said the WikiLeaks founder was likely to be held in conditions of isolation in a so-called supermax prison in the United States, and procedures described by US authorities would not prevent him from potentially finding a way to take his own life.
And we had an awful time for hours outside the court. They wouldn't let us gather, they wouldn't let us assemble. There's the man who kept warning us just standing to my left listening to me. Hello, my friend. Not exactly your friend, policeman. It was just a hideous experience the last few hours. We weren't allowed to assemble, to support,
What do you feel about the decision?
Sorry, I'm just trying to find my words. So to have spent hours of real distress and misery at the state of our country right now, where living isn't allowed anymore, to have gone from that state of misery in a blink to this extraordinary... I mean, yes, we're not all the way there, but my God, we're some of the way there, and it's a better result than anyone dared hope for. I mean, Craig Murray said the same thing. No one thought that this was coming. I mean, everyone is amazed, surprised. Every political point she made and picked apart was truly, truly awful. And yet, on health grounds, this really, thank God, wonderful decision. I mean, I don't know what to make of it all yet. I'm highly relieved, kind of suspicious. There was a bit of a leak on it some time ago, which I heard and could hardly believe, but it was true.
Julian Assange's partner, Stella Morris, noted this Monday that the ruling represents a victory for Julian and a first step towards justice, while adding that she's extremely concerned that the US government has decided to appeal the decision.
Today is a victory for Julian.
Yes. Yes.
Today's victory is the first step towards justice in this case. We are pleased that the court has recognized the seriousness and inhumanity of what he has endured and what he faces. But let's not forget, the indictment in the US has not been dropped. We are extremely concerned that the US government has decided to appeal this decision. It continues to want to punish Julian and make him disappear into the deepest, darkest hole of the US prison system for the rest of his life.
Chilean high school students mobilised this Monday to protest against a new university entrance exam. The Coordinating Assembly of High School Students organised a rally outside the Education Ministry, which was met with repression by police forces who arrested 9 students as well as camera persons who were filming the attacks on students. The student movement has stressed that the entrance exam deepens inequalities in the education sector.
We are here to defend our historical demand for universal access to higher education, and we have not obtained any kind of response. This shows the response of the government, the repression that there was towards our classmates and the press. Once again, the absolute lack of willingness on the part of the authorities to undertake real transformations to this model and this educational system, and that persists according to the marketization of education, as well as the segregation and discrimination within education. We know that the possibility of universal access is not impossible, as the authorities claim today, but it is actually completely viable.
In Peru, rural workers and the government resumed talks on Monday with the aim of reaching an agreement in the face of the protests against the new agricultural labour law. Workers' representatives are set to present their proposals to the authorities after lawmakers approved the new law, despite the ongoing protests and the calls for their demands to be included in the legislation. 4 rural workers have been killed following violent police repression of the demonstrations. Sector workers stress that the new law does not address their calls for better wages and working conditions. The government of Argentina is evaluating the implementation of new measures to curb the spread of the coronavirus. Among the measures that could be imposed before the end of this month, authorities are considering restricting access to public squares and beaches, as well as imposing a curfew or returning to a strict lockdown, but with a more prepared health sector. The government estimates that by January 10th, it will have the data regarding the number of people infected with COVID-19 during the Christmas and New Year festivities. The country has reported more than 5,800 COVID-19 cases and 107 deaths in the last 24 hours. President Alberto Fernandez called on the entire population to reflect on the current health situation and follow the necessary guidelines. US President Donald Trump and President-elect Joe Biden are set to converge on Georgia ahead of Tuesday's polling day in a final push for votes, a decision that will determine whether Republicans or Democrats run the Senate. Biden's victory in Georgia in the presidential election has left Republicans feeling nervous about their chances in a traditionally red state, while Trump continues to rant without evidence about the rigged election process in the state. The runoff vote, which polls show is on a knife edge, pits Republicans David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler against Democrats Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. Millions have been poured into Georgia in a 2-month election onslaught, but just before polling day, attention has been on Trump's extraordinary conversation with Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger. The call, which was first published by the Washington Post on Sunday, sees Trump attempt to pressure the secretary into overturning the state's election result, which saw Joe Biden claim a narrow victory. The French government has promised a rapid scale-up of its vaccination campaign with shots for all at-risk caregivers, not just in nursing homes, after it came under fire for its slow start to the programme.
In France, we have chosen to vaccinate, first of all, the very frail elderly people in their homes, in the nursing homes, the caretakers in their homes, which are the hospitals and the vaccination centers in the town. We are going to rely a lot on local doctors, and we want to have local vaccination. And when you spoke to me earlier about the relationship with elected officials, I have already asked the elected officials to identify the structures we could work with to bring together doctors and nurses. I'm not at all sure that this should take the form, in my opinion, of large stadiums in which thousands of people would come to line up in the middle of winter.
Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said Monday that from Tuesday, people in Scotland are legally required to stay at home, except for essential reasons, in order to curb a renewed surge of coronavirus infections. Sturgeon said that the new, faster-spreading variant of the virus, which was detected in the UK, is a massive blow, telling lawmakers that Scotland will be placed in lockdown for at least the whole of January to help ease the pressure on hospitals and intensive care units. Under the new lockdown rules, which are broadly similar to those imposed during the first peak of the pandemic in spring, people can go out for exercise but can only meet one other person from another household. Scotland to date registers over 135,000 COVID-19 cases.
The new faster spreading variant of the virus is a massive blow. And possibly the most simple way of explaining the challenge we face right now is to compare it to a race. In one lane we have vaccines, and our job is to make sure they can run as fast as possible. And that's why the government will be doing everything we can to vaccinate people as quickly as possible, and I will say more about that later. But in the other lane is the virus, which, as a result of this new variant, has just learned to run much faster and has most definitely picked up pace in the past couple of weeks. To ensure that the vaccine wins this race, it is essential to speed up vaccination as far as possible, but to give it the time it needs to get ahead, we must also slow the virus down. And because it is now spreading faster, that means even tougher restrictions are necessary.
Greek health authorities have detected the first cases of the British COVID-19 strain during the screening of 2 flights from the United Kingdom. 4 people under the age of 30 who arrived in Athens on December 21st and 22nd tested positive in a rapid test at the airport. According to health sources, the passengers of both flights are under epidemiological surveillance, with no further infections detected so far. Greece, with about 11 million inhabitants, has registered nearly 5,000 COVID-19 related deaths and over 140,000 cases. Members of the Organisation of the Petroleum Exporting Countries failed to reach an agreement this Monday on whether or not to increase output in February. The majority of OPEC members are against the increasing production levels due to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, as new lockdowns are likely to further hit oil prices due to lower demand. OPEC and its allies, known as OPEC Plus, increased output by 500,000 barrels per day this month. Member countries are set to meet again on Tuesday to try to reach an agreement. Iran on Monday officially began the process of producing 20% enriched uranium at its Fordo nuclear facility, according to a government spokesman. The Iranian executive sent a letter to the International Atomic Energy Agency in December, informing it of the initiative. The decision follows an Iranian law approved recently that authorises the annual production of at least 120 kilos of uranium enriched to up to 20%. The move is a new step back from Iran's commitments, according to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or nuclear deal, from which the United States unilaterally withdrew. According to Iranian authorities, the world powers who signed the deal have not fulfilled their obligations, thus relieving Iran of meeting its commitments. Representatives of India's government and protesting rural workers have failed to reach an agreement on 3 agricultural reform laws, which farmers have called to be repealed. The government refused to revoke the new laws, and agricultural workers have pledged to continue blocking key highways linking the capital and the country's north. Rural workers say the laws will lead to the cartelisation and commercialisation of agriculture, making farmers vulnerable to corporate greed. Tens of thousands of protesters have been blocking highways for nearly 6 weeks, despite the coronavirus pandemic and bad weather. Despite the deep divisions, the government and workers' representatives have agreed to meet for more talks on Friday.
There was a long debate about repealing the 3 new agricultural laws, but they are not ready to repeal them. In one way, you can say the meeting was inconclusive. The issues remain the same. Now we have been given another date for meeting, but looking at the government strategy, we don't have much hope for any agreement in the future. This government, when they are not in power, they talk for the people. When they are in power, they start talking for the corporates, referring to corporations. On the issue of the new laws, they keep repeating the same thing morning and night. I think it is not in their hands at all. They have to work according to their rulers, referring to corporations. They are merely puppets who dance in front of them.
On Monday, schools reopened in Kenya, with over 15 million students expected to return to classrooms, most for the first time since they closed in March due to the coronavirus pandemic. Students in some years returned to school in October to prepare for exams, but on Monday the bulk of the nation's students went back to school following a government directive that all schools should reopen on January 4th. Kenya is the last country in East Africa to reopen its schools, and head teachers have been advised to admit students from all years and to follow anti-COVID health protocols. According to local sources, this is proving to be challenging, with many schools overwhelmed by the number of students arriving. Students who returned in October were able to spread out among classrooms, but school heads say they do not have enough rooms to accommodate the January influx, with some classes having over 80 students, making social distancing virtually impossible.
Because before we closed for COVID, we had a population of 2,409. As you can see there, of course there is an impact. We expect a big number of people to come in. Our classes, the smallest class has 82 people. The biggest class has 104. And we are aware of the challenge. And we have planned what to do. We may not achieve what we really wanted to do, because we would have like a situation whereby we have at least 20 people per class for that. In our situation, we cannot even have 50. We shall definitely have the 80 because the classrooms are not available. Our compound is small because other than the school field, we don't have any other compound. But we have got to rise up to the challenge. We cannot tell those new students to go back home. They must be in a school somewhere.
According to local media, legendary Lebanese musician Elias Rabhani has died at the age of 82 after contracting COVID-19. The composer, songwriter and orchestra director was the third and youngest of the famous Rabbani brothers, who formed with Lebanese diva Farouz the leading trio of Lebanon's contemporary music between the mid-50s and late 1970s. Elias was known for his pop hits from the early 70s, as well as for his Western-influenced compositions. And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.